So let's talk enlisted versus officer. What's going on, guys? So I hope all of y'all are having a fantastic day. I know I'm having a pretty great day myself so far. I know it just got really dark real quick. But anyways, I wanted to make a video talking about enlisted versus officer. If you guys didn't know, I am a ROTC cadet. I'm also in the Army Reserves and going through that whole route. And I basically just got out of class. And in the class, we were talking about some things that officers are going to have to do, some of the things that I'm going to have to do once I commission this May. And I really wanted to make a video talking about the whole enlisted versus officer because I haven't done that before. I don't think I have. So some of the few things that I want to get across in this video, a couple of points I want to get is some of the things that you're going to be doing as an enlisted soldier or doing as an officer, and basically the differences between those, the responsibilities, and how close they are to the soldiers themselves. When you guys go into the military, when you're getting through basic training and AIT, you guys are going to realize that the life of an enlisted soldier versus the life of an officer is totally different. And you treat both ranks of enlisted people and officer guys as like you treat them so totally differently. And that's just something that you guys got to know from the get-go. Now, the main difference between enlisted soldiers and officer soldiers and like kind of the roles and responsibilities of the two is that the enlisted soldiers generally pretty much do all of the stuff, right? The officers are more of the planners. And I say we as in like I'm about to be an officer. We are the ones that really make the decisions on the kind of training that's going on. We plan out the missions. The officers will basically create the entire plan on what you guys are going to do as enlisted soldiers, right? So, and I also say you guys because most of you are going the enlisted route rather than the officer route. But if you have watched some of my ROTC videos, that's awesome as well. But the officers are basically the planners. The enlisted soldiers are basically the soldiers that carry out the plan. And that's kind of the gist of the whole relationship between officers and enlisted. You'll generally have, your company commander, which will be a captain generally, and that soldier, that officer is in charge of the entire company. So the approximately, 100 to 200 soldiers depending on how your battalion and everything is structured. So they're going to be in charge of all those people. And for all of those people, they're going to have to be planning essentially all the training stuff that's going on, along with other, second lieutenants, first lieutenants, and help with the first sergeant, platoon leaders and stuff like, or platoon sergeants and stuff like that. But for the most part, the officer is going to be the one making the plan, doing the final decision, and they are just in charge of the enlisted soldiers, their entire company for a company officer. If you don't know much about the Army or the rank structure or the actual role of an officer in the Army, one of the analogies that you can use, I like to use for the role of an officer is basically if you look at the Army as a business, right? So you have your whole company like as a business, and you have your company in the Army, and you have an officer, more than likely a captain, who is in charge of that entire company. Their role is very similar to a essentially CEO role, a business owner role of their own, civilian company. What they're going to be doing is planning out everything that the company is going to be doing. And now I'm talking in business terms. They're planning out everything that the company is going to be doing, what kind of supplies you need, how many people you need to do this certain job. You need to, do all these things to accomplish a certain task, which could be making sales and whatever. So that's kind of like the business role. They're making the plan on how the business is going to be run. On the Army side, the officer is making the plan on how the unit that they are in charge of and how that is going to be run. Whenever I first commission, a second lieutenant is usually a platoon leader, which a platoon is usually somewhere, I would say, between 30 to 40, 50 people. And as a second lieutenant, I will be in charge of all of those soldiers. And so in a way, they will be like my company that I'm in charge of. So I will be the one making the decisions on the kind of PT we're going to be doing. I'll be making sure that everybody has all the right equipment and, just all the other things that go along with being an officer, a platoon leader. I don't want to go into that in this video. I'm just letting you guys know more or less the role of an officer and what they play. Now, transitioning over to the enlisted side, the role of an enlisted soldier, right? So if we go from E1 to E4, the lower enlisted, that's what it's called. So E1 to E4 is a lower enlisted soldier. And then once you get up to NCOs like E5, E6, E7 are just NCOs, and like the higher NCOs are going to be your like first sergeant and sergeant majors, master sergeant, and stuff like that. But the role of the lower enlisted guys, they're really like the grunt workers. They're the one pulling all the heavy weight. They're in the dirt. They are hands-on doing what the officer wants you to do, right? You are the one, when you guys get into the Army, for those initial couple of years when you're going from E1, E2, E3, E4, that's like the grunt work. That's the crappy stuff. That's the stuff whenever the battalion area needs to have the weeds picked. You're the one that goes through the battalion or your company, whatever. You guys go through and y'all are going to pick weeds by hand. That's kind of some of the stuff you guys have to look forward to. You're going to go around and get in a huge line and just start picking up trash. And that's some of the things that you're going to have to do. Once you get up to the higher ranks as an enlisted soldier, E5 maybe not so much, but E6, E7, you're not going to be really doing these things. The role of really an NCO is to take what the officer wants, we're going to use a company still for example, what the officer wants the company to do, they're going to tell the first sergeant, then those, or the platoon sergeants, they're going to distribute all the information out to the lower level NCOs, and they will be the ones that eventually, the lower NCOs will be the ones that eventually distribute the information to the lowest level, which would be the lower level or the lower enlisted soldiers. And that's kind of the flow of information. You got, like, in a company example, because things can get real complicated when you go super high up, but the company commander wants this thing done, then they tell like the platoon leaders can tell the platoon sergeants, so these will be like the E7s, E8s, and then those guys will tell the squad leaders, which will be like E5, E6, depending on the structure and everything. So they'll tell the E6s, which will then tell the lower enlisted soldiers. And so you can kind of see how things start to kind of trickle down, and if something sucky needs to go on, so let's say the company commander needs something, like they need the battalion, we're going to use trash picked up again because it's a really easy example. Let's say the battalion, the company area needs to be cleaned up, the trash needs to be picked up, the weeds need to be done, and the company commander tells somebody to do that. Well, that person, the platoon leader, whatever, will then tell their higher NCO under them that they need to find somebody to do it, and it keeps on going down. You tell like an E5 sergeant, hey, we need to get this done, and then the E5 says, hey, you E2 private, you've only been in the Army for a year, go and do this thing that I don't really want to do. Now, it's not like they're necessarily pushing off on you. That's kind of how things work, right? So you got the officer making the plan, distribute the plan, and the lower enlisted are really the ones that do the grunt work of the plan. So that, in a nutshell, is basically the enlisted versus officer, their roles, and what they're supposed to kind of do as a whole, enlisted versus officer. Now, how do you kind of treat these two things in the Army? You got enlisted soldiers, you got officer soldiers or officers. How do you kind of treat them? Well, enlisted guys, you're going to be, standing at parade rest when you talk to somebody who's an NCO that's higher than you, and an officer is supposed to stand at attention. But something that you guys need to know, and something that people don't really understand, and that is just the difference in quality of life, the difference in the ways you get treated as an officer. It is insanely different. It's much, much better than an enlisted soldier. An enlisted soldier, you kind of get crapped on a lot of the times, and you're kind of the product of a lot of bad decisions. And that's one of the reasons that I wanted to be an officer, because I kind of like making the decisions rather than being the product or having to deal with an outcome of a bad decision. I would rather be told that I made a stupid decision than to have somebody tell me to do something that's really stupid and then I got to do it and I'm just like, oh my gosh, why can't I find a better, or why can't I tell them that there's a better way? But you just can't do that really in the Army. Whenever somebody tells you to do something, you can't most of the time just be like, oh no, that's a bad way, we should do it this way. That's really not how things work in the military. There's a lot of planning that goes on and you can't really just wing it half the time. So what are some of the ways that you actually will treat an officer better, right? So just for an example, right, so they might get nicer food, they might get better food, better eating areas. I know that, you know, enlisted and officers aren't really, they're not supposed to mingle with each other. So there are a lot of times they're just like totally separated from the group. You will not generally see, or you just won't see officers chilling and hanging out with enlisted soldiers. Another way that officers kind of get treated better is like barracks or sleeping areas, and they really kind of get like first dibs when it comes to like good essential things. So let's say you're going out on some training event and there's only so many tents available. Well, guess who's going to get those tents? It's going to be like your headquarters element and the officers, and the enlisted soldiers are going to be left outside to sleep on the ground, and that's just kind of how things go. The other way that, or the really just the biggest way, is just the way you talk to officers. Like there's just a level of respect that is given to officers pretty much across the board. There's just a level of respect that is given to officers that just makes them be treated much, much better than an enlisted soldier, and that's something that's really cool. I know as me as a cadet, like I'm in like a limbo land between enlisted and officer. I used to be an enlisted soldier. I made it up to specialist E4, and then I was about to be a sergeant, but I transitioned to being a cadet, and now I'm about to be an officer, and it's kind of just weird because I'm not necessarily an officer yet, but you kind of treat me like an officer, and just that little taste of how, you know, you get treated as an officer is just it's crazy different. It's just crazy different the way you get treated as an enlisted soldier, you know, even a lower enlisted soldier versus a cadet or a second lieutenant or just any officer in general. It's just a big difference. I don't really know how to explain it besides that you just get treated a lot better as an officer than you do as an enlisted soldier. So that is it for this video. I hope you guys enjoyed it. I hope I explained the roles of enlisted versus officer fairly well. I do my best in all of these videos, but you know, I'm not perfect. But I hope you guys enjoyed it. If you did, hitting that like button will be awesome. If you have any questions about the rank structure, or any other thing you have, any other questions you have, leave your comments down below. If you want to follow me on Snapchat or Instagram, you can do that. Links are down below in the description. You can send me questions on there. I've been getting a whole lot of questions on Instagram. That kind of seems like the place to be right now, so that's kind of cool. So, you know, look at the description. You guys can follow me if you want to follow me. Other than that, if you want to stick around for some more videos in the future, hitting that subscribe button would be also great. And I will see you guys later.